What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the All Aussie Rules podcast. This is episode 16, and this is our round 6 review. Big weekend of footy, bigger weekend of football coming up with Anzac Day coming up this weekend. But yeah, first we'll have a look at round 6. So this episode, we're going to have a look at the latest news. We'll have a look at my tipping results. Then we'll jump in and check out all 8 matches of round 6 and finish off this episode with a look at the award leaders. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all of those stuff. Every interaction helps, so I appreciate you for tuning in. You can find me as always on Twitter, Instagram, and I have also started a TikTok, so check them out. And before we do fully jump into this episode, just a reminder, we will be doing 3 episodes this week. So there's today's episode coming out on Monday, which is the review episode as always. Wednesday with the early game on Wednesday night, and then 2 on Thursday. We're going to do a preview of those 3 matches and the power rankings and my tips for the week. And then on Friday we'll do a bonus episode which will be previewing the rest of the matches, so the remaining 6. And as an added bonus, we're also going to have a look at some of my player ratings for the season up through the first 6 rounds. For those that don't know, I do a rating system out of 100 for every player, every match. So we'll have a look at some of them. If there's anyone in particular you'd like to know my ratings of, post them in the comments and I will try and add them to the list for the episode. But yeah, now we'll jump in. Latest news, probably the biggest news of the day, is that the tribunal's going to be busy this week. We've got 3 cases heading there, 2 for the Giants and 1 for the Eagles. Toby Green and Jesse Hogan for GWS, Tom Barrass for the Eagles. I think Jesse Hogan is, I don't know why they're challenging it. I don't see how he gets off. He clearly hit the guy in the face. Might not have been hard contact, but you're off the ball and you got him in the face. Just take your week. Move on. Toby Green, I think, is unlucky. People are comparing it to Peter Wright. I think it's not as bad as Peter Wright's. I don't think Peter Wright should have got 4 weeks, definitely not. But I don't think he should have got it. I don't think Wright should have probably got a week, but I think Toby Green, even more so than that, doesn't deserve a week. But that's my opinion. And Tom Barrass, I think he's going to be in trouble. I can't see him getting off. But Charlie Cameron got off last week, so what would I know? So yeah, that's the major news of the day, of the weekend. So we'll have now a look at my tips for the weekend, which is a bit of a sorry viewing this. St Kilda, they were atrocious, got that one wrong. The Crows also were pretty bad and the Bombers were very good, got that one wrong. Collingwood, I got that one wrong. Collingwood were just far too good. Carlton, we got one guys, we got that one. Brisbane were no good against Geelong, we got that one wrong. We went Freo over West Coast and that just was pretty much the exact opposite. I went Freo by 56 and it was West Coast by 40 or 50 and probably could have been more than that. Then Sunday came around, we got a couple wins. We got Sydney over Gold Coast and Hawthorn over North Melbourne. So we only got 3 out of 8, which is a very poor week and sits us at 36 out of 54 for the year. So we have a bit of work to do, but we'll keep plugging away. Hopefully over the coming weeks we can show some improvement. First game of the weekend, we've got St Kilda hosting the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium, and this was over before it almost started. The Doggies just thrashed them. 7 goals to 1 in the first quarter, 5 goals to 3 in the second, 5 goals to 1 in the third. St Kilda came back by a couple goals in the last quarter, but she was well and truly over. St Kilda had Membry kick 3 goals. For the Bulldogs, Norton kicked 6, Bont and Waitman kicked 3 each. Waitman got all 3 of his in the first quarter, I believe. Doggies just outperformed them in just about every facet of this game. It was good to see Bailey Dale, and Jack McRae playing very good games for both of them. Dale had 39 touches, I think, and McRae had 30 as well as a goal. Well, actually, they both kicked a goal. Treloar also had plenty of it, kicked a goal. Bontempelli, I think, had 24 touches, 3 goals. He was huge. And obviously, Norton kicked 6. St Kilda, they weren't in this game at any point. I understand that it was like 3 games in, I don't know how many days, 11 days or something. Like, they have had a little bit of a tough schedule, but they're not the first team this year that has. They'll certainly be wanting to come out next weekend and show that it was just a little blimp. Fatigue got them and they'll bounce back, but we'll see what happens with them going forward. My votes for this match, I went Bailey Dale 3, McRae 2, Treloar 1. But on Brownlow night, I could see any one of those top 5 Bulldogs players getting votes. They were all very good. And there were other players as well that were very good. They had very even performance, but just they absolutely thrashed them. So that was Thursday night. Friday night we went over to Adelaide Oval for Adelaide hosting the Bombers. And the Bombers, where have they come from? They were the far better team. We might as well start with the controversy here, but they were the better team on the night. We'll start with saying that. However, they probably should have lost. They win by 3 points, but Adelaide should have had a set shot 25 metres out directly in front after the siren. Draper dived on the footy and somehow the umpires missed that and don't award a holding the ball free kick. Umpires are human. They make mistakes just like all the players make mistakes and everybody else in the world makes mistakes, but it's a pretty bad time for a blue like that. I think it was obviously holding the ball, and the AFL have come out and said yes, it should have been paid. But that's football. We move on. Essendon get the win. They were the better team. They had more of it. They tackled better. They went forward plus 19 on inside 50s, I think. The one bad side of their game was the fact that they kicked poorly in front of goal, and that's nearly what cost them. They obviously kicked 10 goals, 18. I think even after that, that still has them in 5th in accuracy in the AFL, so it shows that they have been very consistent with their goal kicking this year, except for this one game. It nearly cost them, but it didn't, so they get a move on. Best players, Dawson, I think, for Adelaide was the best player on the ground. He was the only reason Adelaide were close in this. He had 30 odd touches, kicked 2 goals. He had 9 tackles. He was huge all night. Saligo was good for Adelaide as well. And then I've also got Hinge, Worrell and Smith in the top 5, but they were a fair way off the top 2. For the Bombers, they had plenty of good players, but the top 3 I had Caldwell, Merritt and Martin. I think they were the best 3 for the Bombers. For the Brownlow votes, I went Dawson 3, I think he was best on ground. Merritt 2, Caldwell 1. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about this game. Bombers were the better team. They got the win, and I guess sometimes the footy gods favour you, I guess. So yeah, now we'll move on to Saturday's game, which was, or the first game on Saturday at least, was the MCG, Collingwood Port Adelaide. Weird sort of game, this one. Port Adelaide jumped them early. They kicked 6 of the first 7 to lead by 31, and then about 5 minutes into the second quarter, they'd kicked the first 2 of that quarter as well, and it was 8 goals to 3, and it looked pretty much over at that point. What was the turning point? I don't know, maybe Hoskin Elliott taking a screamer and kicking a goal. But something clicked for Collingwood and they got back to their surge football where they just get the ball going forward, they link up and kick goals quite quickly. Lipinski kicked 4, which was huge for them. Mychek 3, Schultz 2, Hoskin Elliott and Cox both kicked 2. but like all their small forwards did well. Bobby Hill got 1 goal but 4 goal assists. Their midfielders had plenty of it. Dacos had 30. I think DeGoey had mid to high 20 possessions. Centre clearances, they were all very good. For Port Adelaide, they started really well. They looked the better team for the first quarter and a half. And then after that, they just didn't really show much. They weren't terrible, but, I mean, they never... Well, they might one day, but going to the MCG is not an easy task for the interstate teams. And, look, it's probably a similar result to this time last year. I think it was round 2 last year even, when Collingwood beat Port Adelaide by quite a bit. I think it might have been 60 points. So when you look at that, Port Adelaide turned it around their season after that. So I wouldn't write them off. It's not even that bad of a result for them. Best players could go many, many ways with this, but I went Dacos 3, DeGoey 2, Houston 1. Whether any of those 3 get votes, I don't know. There's so many players that all were doing different things that were all very good. Hoskin Elliott was huge. As I said, Lipinski kicked 4 goals from the forward flank. Butters was good. So we'll see what happens with that, but I think those 3 players were all very good and very important in the result. So straight after that, we went across town to Marvel Stadium for what was probably, on paper, the match of the round. Carlton GWS, both teams absolutely flying this season, and for the first half especially, it certainly lived up to that expectation. Both teams were very close. It was 9 points to GWS at half time, and then after that Carlton kind of took over in the third quarter, kicking 7 goals, and that was the quarter that won the game for them, 7 goals to 3 in a game that ended up being 19 points. So third quarter was huge for Carlton. Charlie Curnow kicked 3 goals for 4, Mackay kicked 3, De Koning kicked 3, so that's 3 tools in the forward line, all kicking 3 goals for Carlton. So that sends a little bit of danger sign to the competition, because not many teams are going to have 3 tall defenders to take care of those 3. For GWS, Jesse Hogan kicked 3, but he has been suspended for a week and taking it to the tribunal, so we'll see how that goes. Kelly kicked 3, Riccardi 3. Key things for this game. Look, Carlton's efficiency going forward. Yeah, they, as you can see, they had 32 scoring shots to 23, so and that was only from 3 extra inside 50s. So they were very good at getting a score from going forward. GWS obviously kicked straight, which kept them alive from the fact that they didn't have as many shots. Clearances were absolutely dominated by Carlton, which going into this game, I think I did mention the fact that both of these teams do not dominate clearances, especially centre clearances. So I was interested to see how that would play out, and Carlton dominated them. They were plus 16 for clearances, most of them centre clearances, so 22 to 8 is one of the biggest thrashings in centre clearances you'll probably almost see this year. So maybe a turnaround time for Carlton. Their clearance game has been the one part of their game that has not been great. This performance showed that, hey, they can win the clearances and win them comfortably. So if they keep doing that going forward, with their 3 tall forwards going forward as well, it could be very tough for the competition. Danger signs, in my opinion, for a lot of other teams. Contested ball was dominated as well by Carlton. As usually, if a team wins clearances that much, they're going to probably be the better contested ball winners. GWS had high marks and slow play, but it didn't help them really. They tackled all right, GWS, but yeah, just clearly getting too much of the first ball for Carlton was what probably won them the game in the end. When GWS are looking good, they look very good. In the second quarter, I couldn't see how they would lose that game. They looked very good in the second quarter. They moved it well. They looked much better team. Second half came around and Carlton dominated it back, so we'll see what that means going forward. Best players on the ground. Cripps was huge. He had a lot of clearances. He had a lot of the ball. Sam Walsh, he's played 2 games and played 2 absolute crackers. De Koning kicked 3. He was very good up forward. Kennedy was good. Nick Newman was good. Harry Maguire was good. Charlie Curnow was good. There was plenty of other players that were good. Carlton had a very even performance. Outside of probably Cripps and Walsh, who were the 2 standouts. For GWS, Kelly was clearly their best player. He kicked 3 goals. He had 20-odd touches. And then the rest of the team was a fair way off him. Perryman, Buckley, Whitfield and Briggs I had in the top 5 for GWS. Votes, I think Cripps has to get the 3 in this one. He was their best player, in my opinion, by quite a bit. Well, not just their best player, the best player on the ground. He absolutely played a very good game. It's probably his best game this year by a fair bit, I reckon. Kelly was very good, and Walsh, as I said, 2 games and probably in the votes both of those games. He's been very good. We then went to Saturday night football, and we went up to a wet and wild Gabba. So this was Brisbane hosting Geelong. Brisbane had been showing some good form going into this. Geelong obviously undefeated. It was billed as another big game, like 2 big games back to back. And wet weather probably changed how teams would play and perhaps the result, but Brisbane did not bring it at all. They finished 4 goals 13, which is pretty atrocious. Kicking 4 goals for starters, but also kicking 4 goals 13. It's not ideal. Geelong kicked 9-9, got a semi-comfortable win. I mean, going into the last quarter was, I don't know, Geelong were winning, but they were only up by, 7 points or so. But they made sure of it in the last quarter. They were the better team throughout probably most of the night. I don't think the scoreline really shows it as close as it probably was, but it wasn't the best performance by the Brisbane Lions. Obviously, wet weather football means there was a lot of stoppages, a lot of clearances, a lot of ruck hit outs and all of that sort of stuff. Geelong won the inside 50s by 6. I think Brisbane probably overpossessed it, being wet weather football, to be plus 42 disposals and have 6 less inside 50s is not ideal in any weather, but especially in the wet weather. They probably handballed it too much and probably should have been trying to get the ball forward a bit more. Obviously forward efficiency for both teams was quite low, but you kind of expect that in the wet, so I wouldn't be too stressed about that. Hit outs 65 to 35 for Geelong. Shows how many stoppages there were. Clearances 51 to 51, which are massive numbers for both teams, obviously because of the wet. Contested ball, Brisbane won, which in the wet, if you're winning the contested ball, you'd be like, must have played all right. But I think, as I said before, they just probably overpossessed it and ended up not converting from that. And yeah, the major difference in the game, 4 goals 13. So 1 less scoring shot, and they lost by 26 points. So that's basically where the game was. Multiple goal scorers was Orko 2 for Brisbane, and then Geelong, Henry Stengel with 2 each. Best players on the ground, Brisbane had Zorko, was very good. He had a fair bit of it and kicked 2 goals. The rest of Brisbane were only okay. For Geelong, Stengel was very good. Atkins was good. Myers was good. In the end, I went Stengel with 3 votes. I think just 2 goals, and I think he had 20 odd touches, and a lot of class play from him. I gave him 3. Zorko was Brisbane's best by far. He's had a very good season so far. And then Myers, his ability in the wet just to find the target was very good. Now we went to the Wild West for what was a wild game. I don't think too many people predicted this. I know West Coast won the week before against Richmond, but the derby was a bit of a fizzler, but not in the way that most people expected. West Coast came out and never looked like losing this. 4 goals to 0 in the first quarter, 5 goals to 3 in the second quarter. That to be up by 37 at half time is pretty insane, and then come out in the second half and win the third quarter by the best part of 30 points as well. Obviously Fremantle won the last quarter, but the game was over by that point, and how that happens, I don't know. I just couldn't have seen this happening 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden West Coast have won 2 games in a row. Fremantle, they've lost 3 in a row. Boy oh boy, does this season look like it could get out of hand for them very quickly. They won their first 3 games. The next 2 were both in Adelaide and narrow defeats, but this one was bad. We'll see if they can bounce back this week. They need to win this week. I haven't even looked at who they're playing this week. Let me just get that up while I'm talking. So they host the Bulldogs. They need that win more than pretty much any result they've ever needed in their life. They do go in slight favourites at the moment, but that is going to be an important game for both teams, but especially Fremantle. Just for momentum and keeping their season alive will be very important there. Where this game was won, I don't know. Disposals were similar for both teams. West Coast got it forward more often though, 48 to 40 inside 50s. As per usual, Freo had a very high disposal efficiency, but they just didn't convert with it. Freo won clearances, 42 to 36. But somehow just don't move the ball. The main thing here, probably the biggest factor in the result, is turnovers. Somehow West Coast were not turning it over. 44 turnovers in a match is very low for any team. West Coast average this year 58 basically, and they've had 44, so that's probably the biggest thing. They just didn't turn it over, whereas Fremantle on the other side still were below their average but had 59, which is an extra 15 turnovers. That's an extra 15 bites at the cherry for the Eagles, and they made use of it. Contested marks, 17 to 7 is quite huge. 17 is a very high number for contested marks. And yeah, 16 goals 9. Who saw this coming? Well done to the Eagles though. They've had a rough couple of years, so any bit of hope is good for them. Players, Waterman kicked 5 again, so he's kicked 11 in 2 weeks. He's been extraordinary the last 2 weeks. Harley Reid kicked 3, had a lot of it. He was very good. Darling, he finally showed a little bit. He kicked 2 for Freo. Jackson, Tracy, and Sturt kicked 2. Best players, West Coast had a lot of good players. Yo was good. Harley Reid, as I just mentioned, the hype around him at the moment is quite massive. His last 2 games have been very good. This one especially. I think he had 19 touches, 3 goals, a lot of clearances, a lot of game-breaking clearances. He just looked very good. Waterman obviously kicked his 5. Kelly was good. Duggan was good. For Fremantle, Clark was good. Fife had 14 clearances, which is quite a massive number. Sarong was okay, and Brayshaw Pearce. Votes, Elliot Yeo, I went with 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if Harley Reid pulls here. I've given him 2. I think he deserves it. Just the way he burst out of the centre a couple times. There was even one time where he tackled a guy, bounces up, gets the ball, runs away from everyone. You just don't see that often. And Waterman, I think, deserves another vote because he kicked 5 goals in a great performance. The opposition kicked 10 goals total and he's kicked 5, so a great performance from him. 2 more games left in round 6 on Sunday. The first one was Sydney hosting the Suns, and at halftime this game looked like maybe my prediction of an upset mightn't be too far off. The main reason I was predicting that it might be an upset was Sydney coming off the bye, but both Sydney and Collingwood came off the bye and showed class this weekend. They both probably started not perfect, but they, I guess, proved the theory of coming off a bye completely incorrect. Mainly in the second half. As I said, it was only 11 points in it at half time, but Sydney came out in the third quarter, kicked 7 goals and then 5 goals in the last. They comfortably won possession for the day. They had 8 extra inside 50s. Both teams' efficiency inside 50 was not great. Like, the amount of scoring shots they got from the amount of inside 50s was not very special, but in the end, if both teams are poor at going inside 50, then it doesn't matter too much. Clearances were very even. Contested ball was pretty even. Probably the major difference, Sydney had a lot of uncontested ball compared to Gold Coast, and that's probably a sign that maybe the pressure wasn't fully there from Gold Coast. Maybe led from start to finish. Sydney had more tackles, which once again shows that the pressure probably wasn't quite at the same level for both teams. Best players, goal kickers, Amadi kicked 4, Papley 3, McDonald, Wicks and Hayward 2 for Sydney. Gold Coast only had the one multiple goal scorer, and that was King with 2. Best players, I think Grundy was huge. He had a lot of contested ball, he had a lot of tackles, he had a lot of clearances, he had a lot of everything. He showed why he's going to be huge for Sydney this year. Was his best game of the year. He's played some good games too, so it's not like he's been useless. He was very, very good. Also kicked his first goal for Sydney. Blakey was very good off the back line. Goulden, he racked him up out on the wing and through the middle, was very good. McInerney was good. Heaney, who has had a stellar start to the year, I gave 1 vote. I think he was very good. He started well. He probably tailed off a little bit, but he did enough. For Gold Coast, Ferrierini, Flanders were both good. Lukosius was very good up and down back. Rao and Mac Andrew. I think Brownlow votes Brody Grundy 3, Goulden 2, Sam Flanders 1, but I mean, it's possible Heaney gets votes. I've had him getting votes every match so far for them. I don't think this one's one that he will, but it's not like he was useless. He had 20-something touches and a goal, so he was definitely a factor in the game. The final game of the round was the battle of the bottom teams. Are these the 2 teams that are going to fight out for the wooden spoon? Potentially. You definitely think North Melbourne are going to be, based on what we've seen. It's just a matter of whether Hawthorn can get some wins to get away from them. But from what we've seen so far this year, you'd have to think probably the bottom 2 teams at the end of the year. And yeah, did it live up to expectations of 2 bottom teams? Probably. Second quarter was where the game was won for Hawthorn. 8 goals An 8 goal quarter is pretty impressive from Hawthorn. But 8 goals to 3. So they won the second quarter by 30 points and they win the match by 45. So the rest of the game was reasonably close. Hawthorn still would have won, obviously, but she was blown out in that second quarter. Curtis kicked 3, Larkey kicked 3 for North Melbourne. For Hawthorn, Moore kicked 4, while Chol, Ginnivan, Amon and Meek all kicked 2. Best players, North Melbourne, Zeri was their best. Curtis was very good. Davies Unaki was okay. Sheasel and Larkey were okay as well. For Hawthorn, Moore was very good. He kicked 4 goals. He had a bit of it as well. Nash and Newcomb were very good. And Impey and Morrison were good as well. Votes, I went Moore 3, Nash 2, Newcomb 1. What to say about this game? Hawthorn were going in as favourites and they did what they needed to get the win. Their season's very up and down at the moment, Hawthorn. Obviously this was their first win of the year, but they've shown some good signs off and on. They just don't tend to show it for a whole match, which costs them against teams that are good. Against North Melbourne, that's not really going to cost you, is it? They dominated possession. They had 11 extra inside 50s. They converted better when going forward. North Melbourne were decent at clearances. They actually were +2 in clearances, so it's not all doom and gloom, but just the uncontested ball was huge for Hawthorn, and because they had so much uncontested ball, they didn't turn it over very much because there's no pressure on it. I think that's probably one of the main problems with North Melbourne, in my opinion, this year. Is probably last year as well, but especially this year, they just don't have the pressure. They lost tackle count by 9, which doesn't seem like much, but I want to see them playing more aggressive when on defense, like just pressure that ball handler, cause turnovers, because they don't cause enough turnovers. They probably don't have the class of most other teams, but I would like to see them up their defensive pressure game. That's the final game of round 6. An interesting week. Few upsets again this week. So it's a couple of weeks in a row we've had some upsets. Looking forward, quick look at the ladder. Things that stand out: Geelong 6-0, undefeated, sitting on top. They're flying, done nothing wrong. People are like, oh, they haven't beaten anyone. They're doing what they need to. They beat Brisbane. In Brisbane, I know everybody that's played Brisbane in Brisbane this year has beaten them, but they're doing everything right. 3 teams are 5-1, which is Sydney, GWS and Carlton. And then there's 3 teams on 4-2, which is Port Adelaide, Melbourne and somehow Essendon. So they're flying. A bunch of teams on 3-3 in Bulldogs, Freo, Collingwood, Gold Coast, all completely different ways that they've got to 3-3. Doggy started well, had some falter, won this week in a great game. Freo 1-3, lost 3. Collingwood lost 3, won 3, and Gold Coast up and down like a roller coaster. Brisbane are struggling. They're 2-4. St Kilda, a bad loss this week. Has them at 2-4. West Coast flying 2-4, 2 wins in a row. Adelaide showed a glimmer of hope in round 5, but fell apart again this week. Richmond struggling at 1-5 and lots of injuries. Hawthorn get their first win of the season. They're 1-5, and then North Melbourne, who haven't won a game, and right now you'd be questioning where they do win a game. It won't be anytime soon, I wouldn't imagine. In fact, let's have a quick look at where we think they're a chance to get a win. So we're at round 6. So round 7, this is probably their chance. Adelaide down at Blunston Arena this weekend. Adelaide will need to show better than what they have. They probably will. But that might be one of their better chances to get their first win. St Kilda in round 8. Gold Coast in round 9. In Darwin. Essendon in round 10. Port Adelaide round 11. And then they have the bye. Coming out of the bye, round 13 against West Coast. The way West Coast are playing at the moment, you'd say probably not. But hey, you never know. After that, she's looking bleak. Richmond in round 21, maybe. Depends who Richmond have planned for them at the moment. At that time, sorry. And then round 22, they have Eagles down at Blunston, so that's a chance. And then they finished round 24, which could be the wooden spoon match, Hawthorn versus North Melbourne, at Utah Stadium in Launceston. So they've probably got maybe 4 or 5 chances to get their first win of the year. They will get a win at some point. And hey, maybe it's this weekend. A chance against Adelaide, who are not flying along. Alright, final part of this week's episode, or this week's first episode, is a look at the award leaders. First off, we have the Brownlow. This is my prediction of Brownlow. I get 3-2-1 in every match. Not always necessarily the best player on the ground. It's who I think, a combination of who I think was best on ground and who the umpires, in my opinion, will think is the best on ground. Isaac Heaney flying along still at top. He didn't get any votes this week, but he still sits number 1 with 11. Petrarca, he's up to 10. I also don't think he polled this week. Well, he definitely didn't. They didn't even play. So, good work from me. Kelly, he had 9. He's on 9. He was in the votes this week. Gordon, he's on 8. He's potentially in the votes. Hewitt and Cripps for Carlton, both on 7. Zach Merritt on 7. Sarong on 7, who pretty much had that in the first 3 games and hasn't polled in the last 3, I don't think. So he may be a very big barometer on how Fremantle are going. Zorko's been very good. Miller, he had 6 early. He's struggled a bit, as has Tom Green. Hasn't polled in the last few weeks. Max Gawn has 6. He's been very good. Rose is on 6 in mine. I did see, I think it was on the AFL website maybe. I was on one of them. I had a Brownlow predictor and had him sitting at the top with 12 with Isaac Heaney, and I was like, oh, have I got something completely wrong? I don't. Maybe I have. Butters also on 6. He's been good. Steele 6. Bontempelli 6, but also could be 10. He's been very good. His best is the best in the league, in my opinion. He is a great player. MVP, as always, you see the votes each week. The winning team, best player gets 10, second best gets 8, 6, 4, 2. And for the losing team, best player gets 5, second best 4, 3, 2, 1. So the more games your team wins, the more chance that better votes you get. But also, being good in a losing team every week will still get you quite a bit of points or votes. Petrarca and Heaney sitting on top. Petrarca was leading. Heaney obviously just snuck into the votes this week, which puts him equal first. Max Gawn is flying, so 2 Melbourne players been very good this year. Probably more a sign of it's those 2 and no one else for Melbourne. Butters has been good. Merritt is flying along. He's up to 34, as is Elliot Yeo, which is a sign that being good in a losing team. But they've won their last 2, so I think he's got maximum votes, or maybe 18 votes in the last 2 weeks. Sarong 32, Rose 32, Goulden 32 as well, and then Matt Rouse 31, Anderson and Kelly 29, Cripps 28, and then Houston and Grundy on 27. If you have anybody that you want to know where they're sitting outside of the top 14, let me know. As I said, I will be doing full player ratings, or a wrap up kind of my full player ratings on Friday's episode, which will just if there's players there you want to know, let me know, because I have it all sitting in front of me. Obviously there's too many players to go through them all, being that hang on, I'm just counting them, well, not actually physically counting, but checking my sheets. Over 500 players have played a game this year so far, so it's way too many to go through every single player. But if there are players you're interested in, let me know, and I'll be happy enough to share my thoughts on how their season's going. For example, I can tell you who's the lowest ranked player on the season, and I can also tell you who the highest one is. But yeah, that's everything for this week's first episode. As I said, there will be 3 episodes this week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, before going back to 2 a week next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. Let me know your thoughts on these, on the games, how you think your team's going. I'm interested in all your thoughts. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I haven't got that little logo down below me yet, but TikTok as well. I appreciate you for tuning in. If you're still here, don't forget to share with your friends if you're enjoying my content. And we'll be back in 2 days' time for a preview of the first 3 matches of Anzac Day weekend, even though Anzac Day this year is on Thursday. That's where we're at. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch us on the next one.